So as we continue in John, John tells us towards the end of his book why he even wrote the book. Sometimes have you ever wondered why people write things? In John 20, he says, "Truly, Jesus did many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which were not written in this book. But these are written that you might believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, that believing you may have life in his name." As we look at the ministry of Jesus Christ through the Gospel of John, we must not forget the purpose of why John wrote what he wrote. It was so that we might believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and believing that you may have life in his name. That's what he's trying to say. And this morning, we're going to come to the Galilee, up around the Sea of Galilee, and we're going to have the opportunity to witness Jesus' very first miracle. And beginning with John 2, we're going to read about Jesus' first miracle. And it's going to take place up in Canaan. It says, on the third day. There was a wedding in Canaan of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Now both Jesus and his disciples were invited to the wedding. And when they ran out of wine, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." Jesus said to her, "Woman, what does your concern have to do with me? My hour has not come." His mother said to the servants, "Whatever he says to you, do it." Now there were set there 6 water pots of stone, according to the manner of purification of the Jews, containing 20 or 30 gallons apiece. Jesus said to them, "Fill the water pots with water." And they filled them up to the brim, and he said to them, "Draw out some now, and take it to the master of the feast." And they took it. When the master of the feast tested the water that was made wine, he did not know where it came from. But the servants who had drawn the water knew. And the master of the feast called the bridegroom, and he said to him, "Every man at the beginning sets out the good wine. And when the guests have well drunk, then the inferior. You have kept the good wine until now." The beginning of the signs Jesus did in Canaan of Galilee, and manifested his glory. And his disciples believed in him. After this they went to Capernaum, he, his mother, and his brothers, and his disciples, and they did not stay there many days. So we immediately find ourselves at a wedding feast. And have you been to a large wedding? A wedding that just everyone's waiting for. And this is what the feast would have been. It's up here, and Jesus was invited with him and with his disciples. Jesus' mother Mary is present, and notices right away at this wedding, why do they come in? They're running out of wine. Marriage ceremonies were very important then, as they are now. Sometimes marriage is the biggest thing of a community. And marriage is in this culture a celebration in Jesus' time. It's a great celebration where the family and the community come together. The grooms and his friends would all go to the bride's house. And they'd all go to the bride's house. And then they'd escort the bride back in a festival, almost like a parade, back to the groom's house, where the grand celebration would take place. And this is probably where the exchange of vows would take place and the religious ceremony. On it, I could not find any details, though, of what happened at this time. It's all sort of been lost on the exact ceremony. But the groom would begin giving his bride his gifts, and the marriage feast, and the bride and groom would enter the chamber. And the festivals would go on for about a week. Friends and family would come from all over to this wedding. They'd come from afar. They'd travel days. So weddings are occasions where family connections are renewed over food and drink. So think of a large wedding that's also a big family reunion. It's where everyone gets to come to. It's people that you might have not seen since the last wedding. And we've read that the wedding that Jesus and his disciples are attending had a serious problem, though. They had ran out of wine. There wasn't enough wine to finish the festivals. But before long, they would be completely out. And that would be a catastrophe to this wedding. It says in chapter 2, verse 3, when the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no more wine." We probably don't appreciate this problem today. Today we can just take our credit card and we can quickly run to the store to get more refreshments. If we need soda, we can run and we can be back in a few minutes. But wine, That was not the case in Jesus' day. Having enough wine for the festival was critical. It would be required. It's something that you must do. There's just no way to go get more of it very quickly. And to supply only water for the festivals, this had been a social embarrassment. It had been bad for the bride and groom, especially at a time when the groom's ability to provide would be questioned. This would be a crisis. The wedding will begin to suffer. Yet, before we go very far, we need to look at which day Jesus is attending this wedding. It was on the third day. And that's important because it's going to get caught up several times. But this is going to be important later on, the third day. So on this third day, and when they're talking about the third day, everything I could find is Sunday was the first day, Monday and Tuesday. This happened on a Tuesday is when this wedding was. So here on the third day is when the wedding would be happening. Jesus and his mothers come, and the court just said that they have a problem. But have you ever wondered why Mary comes to Jesus when they ran out of wine? And what could Jesus do? Jesus hadn't done any miracles here. Why is she worrying Jesus about the wine? Why is it Jesus' problem that there's no wine? It's not her wedding. It's not one of his brother's weddings that we can tell. However, Mary knows who Jesus is and that he is the Messiah. Remember, she knows who Jesus is. And she's been waiting on Jesus, her son, the Messiah, to come and show himself. That he is the Messiah. She's been waiting on a moment just like this, when there's a lot of people around, where she wants them to act and say, show yourself. Show that you can do miracles, that you are the Messiah. But you know, whenever we see this, when we read it, we think Mary gets a rebuke. Because Jesus responds with, woman, what have I to do with thee? To me, that sounds like a strong rebuke. And it comes out very condescending or even harsh the way we translate it in English. But that's not the case. When they use the word woman, it's not a condescending term. The term would best be translated as saying lady or madam. Madam, what have I do with thee? Madam. It's a term of an endearment. The Bible commentary said, in modern English, Jesus' response to his mother comes across as blunt and rude. This is a quirk of the translating from one language to another. In the original Greek, his reply was very formal and polite. This implies now a new relationship is going to begin to develop between Jesus and his mother. It begins there at the wedding. Jesus reminds her that she is a woman and he is God. Though she did give birth to him, he is God, and he, as God, cannot comply with her wishes if it is not according to his will. This statement his mother was in was one. This statement for his mother was for one and all to see that they would not be able to expect favoritism from Jesus. Mary was coming up and saying, look, just like if a child comes up to you, you're going to show favoritism to your own child. So Mary's thinking, this is my son, he's going to show me favoritism. But Jesus is saying there is no favoritism. There is no favoritism. This is what matters most. He is respecters of no person. He respects all people, but he doesn't respect one over the other. The first miracle begins to reveal to us right away that Jesus plays no favorites. In Galatians 3:28, we see there is neither Jew nor Greek. There is neither slave nor free. There's neither male nor female. For you all are one in Christ Jesus. And in Acts 10:34, so Peter opened his mouth and said, truly I understand that God shows no partiality. And in James 2:1, my brothers and sisters, believers in our glorious Lord Jesus Christ must not show favoritism. In 1 Timothy 5, I solemnly command you in the presence of God and Christ Jesus and the highest angels to obey these instructions without taking sides or showing favoritism to anyone. And finally, even in the Old Testament, Deuteronomy. For the Lord your God is the God of gods and the Lord of lords. He is the great God, the mighty and awesome God who shows no partiality and cannot be bribed. This is important for us to remember that God does not show favoritism. He treats Mary with the utmost respect. When he says woman, we think it's derogatory, but he's treating her with the utmost respect, and he does not place her ahead of anyone else. Mary is equal to everyone else. Mary realizes this quickly and only states the following to the servants: whatever he says to do, do it. She understands that Jesus is in control and we need to do what his will is. She catches it immediately. And then Jesus tells them to go fill the water pots with water. These pots are the water pots for purification. And it's described in Ezekiel 36:25. I will sprinkle clean water on you and you will be clean. I will cleanse you from all your impurities and from all your idols. So if you was a good Jewish person, you'd have big stone water pots outside your house somewhere, and you'd use them for purification. You'd purify your guests. Anyone that sinned, that's what they're supposed to be. It's for the purification rituals. The stone pots were there for the purification, and they were kept there. And if you sinned or were impure, you would be cleansed. This is the source of that water, was in those pots. But there's a lot of water there. Did you catch how big the water pots are? They said they're between 20 and 30 gallons. That means you would hold between 100 and 180 gallons. When Jesus said to fill these water pots, it's not an easy task. Think of how hard the task would have been. It's not like they had a running water tap anywhere, or they had a spring right there next to them. They probably had to go to a well or to a nearby river or creek. They had to dip up water and had to carry it back and pour it in. It was going to be hard and a lot of work, and carry that water all the way back and pour it into the stone vessels. This is why John, I think, makes it very clear that they filled it to the brim. They went all the way. And imagine if I had 2 or 3 55-gallon drums up here. And I came and handed you pitchers. And I said, go to the kitchen, fill the water up, come up, and fill up the drums. You'd march down, fill up the pitcher, come back up, dump it in. Imagine how long that would take. We don't know how many servants there are, but that had to be a hard and arduous task. It's something that took a little bit. And just like it would take us a while to fill up the pitcher and bring it all the way back, it would take a while. But again, they filled it to the brim. They filled it to the lip. They filled it as full as it could go. How many people, if we ask a task to fill a 55-gallon drum, would fill it all the way up to the lip? How many would stop short at one of the top ribs or something? Jesus wanted them to obey him completely. Jesus told them to fill it, and they continued until it was as full as it could be. Jesus wants us to obey him the same. Jesus does not ask us to do wild things. Some people are afraid to obey Jesus because they're afraid that he's going to ask them to do something weird, way out there, but he doesn't ask us. Usually as servants, his instructions to us are very simple. They're plain and straightforward. The Bible makes them extremely plain to us. Just like fill the jars with water. It's easy. It's straightforward. We know what he asks. And then it says, draw some out and take it to the master of the banquet. This, again, a very straightforward request. I think sometimes we overcomplicate what we believe God's asking of us. We try to overcomplicate it. Do we need to just remind ourselves of the simple, plain, and straightforward things that God calls us to do in the Word, day after day? It's just trusting that his hands will be there. Trusting that he is in control. And it's such things as the commandments of love God, love your neighbor, love your enemies, forgive as God forgives, care for orphans and widows. We have instructions that are very, very straightforward. In John 14, Jesus replied, anyone who loves me will obey my teachings. My Father will love them, and we will come to them and make our home with them. That's picturing a wedding. They lived this out because once the vessels were full, Jesus told them to draw the water out. They're living out obedience. And they live this out. And it says, take it to the master. Imagine you're a servant, and this man you don't even know tells you to dip up the water and take it to the master. This takes a lot of obedience. Jesus doesn't say to do anything fancy or say hocus pocus words. He said just draw out water and take it to the master. And they're drawing out the water and they're taking it to the master. Yet they don't know what Jesus has done. They don't know that the water has been turned to wine. Jesus changed the water into wine. The water couldn't have changed itself into wine. Jesus did. And the wine is the fruit of the vine. You see that in the Word. When they talk about wine, it's often talking about the fruit of the vine. And to go very far, when I looked up the word wine here, the word that they use here can either mean fermented or unfermented. So I know people debate, and that doesn't even help, because the word that they use means both. It depends on the context it's in. In John 15, Jesus would say, I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, fruit if we stay in Jesus. The water was changed into wine by Jesus. The vessels representing the washing away of sins would be the source of this wine. And just later on, in a few chapters, we'll see in the upper room, on the night before the crucifixion, that Jesus would use wine as a representation of his blood in the Lord's Supper. It was because of the shedding of his blood that we will be changed. We will be cleansed, just as those pots represented. Now we have these purification stones vessels in us. And Jesus can change us. Jesus can change us and quickly change us from water to wine. But what are miracles about? People want a sign. People want miracles. And often people want a miracle to do something big, to make them better. But if you read, most of the time when you see the miracles, and probably 100% of the time, we just don't always catch it, miracles draw and direct our attention to something, to someone. And in this case, it's Jesus, to God. This is why I like how John says miracles, signs, because it really highlights what the kind of importance of these powerful deeds Jesus had done and what their significance is. John doesn't try to dress it up and make it at a moment to amuse us. He's trying to get us to question. He's trying to get us, if the turning of water into wine is a sign, what's it signifying? Why is this important? Why did he put this in his when no one else does? Why is it important? What is the meaning of it? What is the directing of our attention to? So this story gives us a vivid pictures of the jars that are used to make the wine. The jars would be normally used for Jewish purification rituals, as I said, with water. And at the beginning, they're just empty. They're waiting to be filled. Can you imagine 6 big stone pots waiting against the wall, waiting to be filled? The Judaism of Jesus' day, at the least, at the levels of the leadership, at the people there, you would have had religious leaders there. They were corrupt and spiritually bankrupt, and they were empty. Even Jesus calls them whitewashed tombs. And he says that you care about the outside, but you don't care about the inside. And he's talking to them as a cup. And the filling of these jars with new wine tells us that something new is beginning to happen here with this first miracle. And it's happening in the midst of the old. It reminds us that there is continuality between Jesus in the New Testament and the Old Testament. So many people just want to throw the Old Testament away. And Jesus did not come to abolish the Old Testament, but he came to fulfill it. And there's a big difference there. These stone jars represented the purification rituals of the Old Testament and the laws of Moses. Because we found it, when you first see the purification is given by the laws of Moses back in Exodus. We see this is representing the law. And Jesus uses these vessels and transforms it into a means of grace. He takes them from the old to the new. His first miracle is now beginning to go from the old to new. Go from the law to grace. Go from the curse to go to the blessings. And this represents the blood being poured out of the new covenant. The wine normally represents blood when you see it in the New Testament. There's a story here that I found when I was just going through that trying to find an illustration. And there wasn't very many illustrations to do with wine. But there's one I found that says an alcoholic came to be a believer. And was asked, how could he possibly believe all the nonsense that's in the Bible? Because the Bible is just a fairy tale. How can you believe all the nonsense and about all these miracles? And he was asked, you don't believe that Jesus really turned water into wine, do you? He says, I sure do. Because in our house, Jesus has changed the wine into our furniture. It's because he realized Jesus changed him. And the wine that he used to drink and get drunk and waste all his money on, he has now been changed so now he can provide for his family. It was all because Jesus changed his life. You know, Mary's initial response was fulfilled, but it was not in her timing or in her way. She comes to Jesus with the problem, and Jesus does answer the problem, but not in the way that she wanted it. The result was far more far more extravagant than she would have imagined. Because here it says the quenching thirst or saving from embarrassment is what she wanted. But Jesus doesn't care about getting himself glory. He wanted faith. He wanted faith. And that's what John said, that the disciples believed. The Bible recorded that the Jewish disciples, that Jesus' disciples, the men that Jesus had got just a few days before down around the Jordan River, that they were present there at the wedding and they put their faith in him because of what they had seen. Because of what they had seen. So really, there's two miracles that happened that day. Two miracles. The first miracle was the changing of the water into wine. The changing of the water into wine so that there could be a celebration, that they can continue on for the rest of the week. For the 7 days that the festival could go on, it would not end early and ruin the wedding for the bride. But you know, there's a second miracle that we can see there. In the second miracle, the hearts of the disciples were changed from condemned sinners to forgiven children of God, just as the water was changed into wine, so that a celebration could continue in their vessels on for eternity. Jesus began to change his disciples. With this first miracle, they began to have faith. So have you ever wondered why Jesus chose a wedding for the first miracle? What's the purpose of a wedding? And I think there could be a couple of reasons here. First, in God's plan for things, a wedding is a one-time event. It's usually the greatest event someone will have in their life, in their eyes. Up to that point, a wedding is one of those great things. Families prepare. Mothers and fathers prepare. It's a great day for the fathers when their daughters are married and their mothers. But it has a permanent ramification. Jesus wants you to be married for the rest of your life. He wants us to be married. It's a permanent commitment. Jesus wants to do a work in our lives, though, just like wedding, so that we will have a permanent commitment to him. And we'll be filled with joy, but not just any joy, but a continual joy that continues to spring up within us. This miracle, though, requires us that we commit our life to him. I think the second reason is that Jesus did his first miracle at a wedding because his ministry starts with a wedding. And at the end, when he comes back, the very first thing that we see is a wedding. It's a foreshadowing of the great banquet. Revelation 19, 6-9. It says, "Then I heard what seemed to be the voice of a great multitude, like the roar of many waters, like the sound of many peals of thunder, crying out, 'Hallelujah, for the Lord our God, the Almighty reigns. Let us rejoice and exult, and give him the glory, for the marriage of the Lamb has come, and his bride has made herself ready.'" Have you ever been to a stadium, a game, like a football game down in Fayetteville, and there's such a roar that it sounds like thunder? There's so many people there talking and speaking that it sounds like thunder, and that's how John describes what's going on in this heaven. There are so many people at this banquet that it sounds like thunder. And it says it was granted to her to clothe herself with fine linens, bright and purity, speaking about the church. For the fine linens is the righteous deeds of the saints. And the angel said to me, "Write this: Blessed are those who are invited to the marriage supper of the Lamb." And he said to me, "These are the true words of God." Jesus begins his ministry on earth with a wedding. One of the first things we do in heaven is attend the marriage supper of the Lamb. It can't be by coincidence. Just as Jesus was invited to the wedding in Cana and resulted in the miracles that John describes. And he says this is the beginning of the signs Jesus did in the Cana of Galilee, manifested his glory, and his disciples believed in him. You know, we too can have that same miracle. We too can have the miracle. We can have our lives changed. We can have the water turned to wine if we allow the Holy Spirit to come and fill us up. But you know, my wife and I was talking. So many people only want to be filled partially full. They don't want to be filled up. They only want to get enough to be comfortable. Because if they get full, they might have to do something with it. As the Holy Spirit's pouring more into it, they might have to do something with it. They only want enough just to be comfortable. Here, Jesus wants to fill us up. And not only fill us up, He wants to change us as a result of the redemptive blood. Of the redemptive blood. If we are changed from water to wine, we are invited to that great wedding supper. That great wedding banquet. As the angel said to John, blessed are those who are invited to the marriage supper of the Lamb. Have you ever been invited to a huge wedding? So a few years ago, back up in Hiawassee, they had a huge wedding. And it was a wedding that everyone would be entitled wanted to go to, basically. There's going to be a big wedding out on the edge of Bella Vista. And all the people would be going. All the farmers around, the bankers, the people in the church, the ministers, everyone was going. And it was a big deal. But there's only so much room, so people wanted to know who was going to be invited. So if they were invited, they were excited. And someone that weren't invited was kind of felt left out. But of course, the bride and the groom had to pay for this wedding, so they had to limit their resources. They only could invite so many people. And some people that were invited were so happy they got to go. Some people was really disappointed they didn't get to go. But the wedding was extravagant. I only got to go because of Vicky. Vicky was invited, and because I'm married, I sort of got to go along by the coattails. And we get there. And it is a huge wedding. A huge wedding. It was so big that there wasn't a church in town that could hold it. They had to go out and they put up a temporary stage. And they had it out on this big field. It was a huge, huge wedding. But it was limited. You had to be invited. But it was only limited because of the resources of the person hosting it. You know, there's a wedding coming. There's a wedding feast that is coming. And we're invited. Everyone's invited. Because God has enough resources for everyone. Everyone's invited. The greatest banquet you've ever been in will seem like something just small and inferior. This will be the greatest feast that heaven and earth would ever know. You know, you have that invitation. You just have to accept it. You are invited. But you must be willing to follow Jesus to go. We all have the invitation. The Word of God declares that we are all the bride of Christ and gives particularly instructions to husbands and fathers. The church is the bride of Christ. We're waiting. In Ephesians 5:25 it says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself for her, that he might sanctify her and have cleansed her by the washing of water with the word, so that he might present the church to himself in the splendor, without spot or wrinkle of any such thing, that she might be holy and without blemish. In the same way, husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. For no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as Christ does the church, because we are all one. We are all members of his body. Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. This mystery is profound, and I am saying that it refers to Christ and the church. However, let each one of you love his wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband. That's the marriage supper of the Lamb. We are the bride. Paul's sitting there and trying to describe the church is the bride. We should keep ourselves blameless, because there is that great wedding feast coming. We are the bride. We are the bride. Christ laid his life down for his bride. One of the greatest things we can do is what it says, is lay your life down for another. That's why Veterans Day is so important. That's why days like today are so important. People lay their lives down. Fathers should lay their wives down for their wives and their children. But the amazing thing is, it happened on the third day. If you remember when I read in Exodus, when did the purification take place? It took place on the third day. And another event would take place on the third day. On the third day, remember, Jesus was changed, transformed, was given his resurrected body, the same body that he has today, and he's coming back for his bride on the third day. And it says, 1 Corinthians 15:52,
in a moment, in the twinkling of the eye, at the last trumpet. For the trumpet will sound, and the dead will be raised imperishable, and we will be changed. The bodies we have today will be changed. These are not the bodies we go through eternity with. We will have a new body. Right now, we are just water. But someday, we're going to be changed. Just like wine. Something better. Because it says, as the Master of the Feast said, you kept the best until last. We will have the best at the last. But it takes obedience. So Margaret Burks was a retired missionary from Tanzania. And she told of a baptism that she attended. And some of the new followers followed the missionary into the river. They had dried up. So imagine a drought here. And the river is just barely trickling. And it said they had to dig a hole. The missionary dug a hole and scooped out a place just deep enough where they could sit down and he could dunk them back and they set right back up. Just deep enough. This is all the water that they could have. And they had their ceremony. And it says the missionary, she was watching from a distance. When the missionary baptized the boy in the shallow water, the child came up out of the ceremony shouting, I'm alive! I'm alive! And he just kept shouting, I'm alive! When the missionary later went and asked the boy, why were you yelling, I'm alive, I'm alive, what are you doing? He explained that when the missionary and the people had spoke about baptism, they said, you are buried with Christ in the waters of baptism. He thought that people were actually being killed in the process, and Jesus was raising them back to life. He thought that they were drowning, and Jesus was raising back to life. Those at the stories begin to chuckle. Can you imagine a young boy standing up here? I thought you were going to drown me, and Jesus is going to raise me back. People begin to chuckle at this child's misunderstanding. But then the missionary asked them a haunting question standing around. That child thought that baptism would kill him, and he would be changed and be raised, and yet he was still willing to go through that process. And she asked, would you be willing to go through the same process if you thought baptism was going to kill you? It was a pointed question. Do you know the faith that young boy had to have? That God was going to change him. That He was going to completely change him. And he was going to be made a new person. So when he came up, he says, I'm alive. That's how we should be. When Jesus changes us and purifies us, we're not the same. We have died and been resurrected. As Paul says, the old man has died and we've been given a new life. And we should be shouting, I'm alive, I'm alive, I'm alive. Because we are invited to the greatest feast ever. No matter what your circumstances, Jesus cares about us. No matter what we do, Jesus cares about us. And I think this shows how much Jesus cared. Jesus cared about the honor of the bride. About the honor of the bride. If they'd have ran out of wine, it would have been a complete dishonor to that bride. And it's something that we might not think of today, but can you imagine later on in that woman's life, all the way through her life, that she would be known as a woman who ran out of wine. Everywhere she went, everyone would remember her, not for who she is, but because her wedding ran out of wine. Jesus cares about the honor of the bride. We are the bride. He cares about our honor. You know, there's things we need. Jesus cares about it. Jesus will provide for what we need. Jesus cares about you and has the power to transform you and to provide for you as He did that bride. And the amazing thing, He has a power to do it in an abundant fashion that we can never, ever imagine. He prepares you for when He returns, that we can scream and we can yell and we can run around yelling, I'm alive. I'm alive. I'm alive. Imagine what that wedding will be. There will be so many people there, it sounds like thunder. So many people there, it sounds like thunder. We can't even imagine that. I would say even the Razorback Stadium would be very small in comparison. It says there's such a multitude that is not numbered. Imagine millions, if not billions of people at the greatest table in the world, talking and screaming and shouting because they've been invited to the greatest thing ever. All because they were changed.
Today we have that opportunity to be changed from water into wine, but we must accept Christ. Father, we just thank you, Lord, that we are your bride. The church is your bride, Lord, and you want us to remain spotless and pure until you return. You even have so many parables about this, Lord, about the church and about the bride. There's the 10 foolish virgins, Lord, for so many was not prepared. And they're locked out from the wedding. They're locked out from the banquet, Lord, because when they came, you don't even know that you say, I do not know you. But those that are prepared, Lord, those that have accepted the invitation, those that are ready, Lord, for you, they enter into this great wedding feast, Lord, and they're in and they'll be with you forever in heaven, Lord. For you say you go to prepare a place for you, Lord. And when it's done, you're coming back. That is wedding terms, Lord. That is what a groom would say to his bride. I'm going to go prepare my house for you. And when my house is ready, I'm coming back for you. So be ready. And Father, you just give us an illustration here that you are coming back. And not only that, but you want us to be ready. And you will change us and you will provide. Father, as our bride didn't even know that she needed wine, didn't even know that she'd ran out of wine, Lord, you provide our needs even when we don't realize that you're providing. And Father, we are so grateful for that. And as we just go out from here today, Lord, help us to be grateful for all the things that you do for us. For this we ask in Christ Jesus' holy name. Amen.